Hi, this is Mark. Congratulations. You have found this amazingly awesome show. Chances are you're listening to it right now on whether it's iTunes or Stitcher Radio or some other mobile app that allows you to stream this amazingly awesome show to your ear holes. And I can't stress how awesomely amazing this show really is. But did you know that you can also catch the latest episode of this show on the Tangibound Network? That's right. Go check out tangiboundnetwork.com. You can look them up and you can listen to it right there. It's even mobile friendly. What more could you ask for? Which means you can pull it up on your iPhone or your Android, even your Windows phone. Yeah, who has one of those? But still, point remains, you can do it. You can do it. Check it out, tangiboundnetwork.com. Listen to this show, the latest episode, every time. Check it out.
Welcome to the Wicked Radio Network.
Life sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. Life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. And life sucks all of the time, so stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Welcome to the Crazy Life, everybody. No Jen this week. She's off doing princess things. So I'm Brian, and joining me is Henno.
Hello.
So
I just pictured her in a little tiara right now.
yeah.
Hi, I'm the princess.
Yeah, I mean, if you know Jen well at all, that's fairly accurate. So yeah.
Hands up, who likes me?
Yeah. Well, you know, whenever you ask that question, your hand should always be raised, right?
Exactly.
Allegedly, I don't know. Yeah. So.
Classic.
Yep. So, first of all, thank you to everyone who's, been with us, and welcome to everyone new to the show. I feel like I'm forgetting something. I don't do these intros like she does. I'm used to just, on Salty Language, just, hey, here's the show. Tony does his thing, and then we get into it. So,
Exactly.
yeah. If you are new to the show, we usually talk about, mental health or mental illness or recovery from, Henno shares stories from recovery from alcoholism, or just kind of whatever we stumble across to just kind of help people in whatever way we can to, just help you and, just make life a little easier or better for you. We're not, a replacement for therapy or anything of that ilk, but, just having some fun here and doing what we can do. So, how was your week, Kenno?
It's been pretty good. Been a little lazy, but it was after I decided that okay, well, I'm not gonna play some live music. Let's see what's in the garage that I don't need that I could sell. When I go in there, and I start pulling stuff out and this and that, and then I did one of the cardinal sins of selling, especially musical instruments, is I played it.
Oh
like,
no! Yeah.
Sell it. That was the 12 string I was playing earlier.
Oh right.
I bought that because I have another 12 string, but this one was exactly the same as my 6 string, and so when we were playing live, it was the sound was relatively close, which is why I bought it. And it turns out it's become a pretty nice guitar, as it's kind of seasons itself a little bit. And I know I tweeted you guys, I literally chopped the tip of my fingertip off, cutting up some meat last week. And so like, I mean, I had it super glued and I started playing, and the 12 string is hard on the fingers.
I would think so.
It really is. And it sounds so good though. And I was like, oh,
it really did. Yeah. Yeah. That was cool when you were playing it. Yeah.
It's a nice sounding guitar. You know what's amazing is like how loud it is, and like the mic isn't even pointed at it. It just,
Yeah, I was wondering. I didn't realize it was a 12 string when you were playing it, but that was the first thing when you started. I was like, wow, that is really loud. And I just thought, I was like, wow, that microphone is really good.
Yeah, and it's really not.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. And so anyhow, I was like, all right, well, because I could get quite a bit of money for it, but I'm like, if it brings me pleasure, I will keep it.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of my rule. It's like, am I using it? No. When I do use it, does it bring me any pleasure? Most of my musical equipment doesn't really bring me any personal pleasure.
Yeah.
But the one thing I decided to do is I'm like, I got to get my guitar stands out and put it out on a stand, because if it's sitting in its case in the closet, I'm not going to pick it up and play.
Right, sure. And if you're not going to play it at all, then it's why have it at that point?
Why have it?
Yeah,
exactly.
Sure.
So, but that's actually kind of been it's an interesting thing that I sit there, last week saying, I don't want to play any live music. And what do? I play probably more music than I have. I pick up the guitar and I have. I've been working on some stuff. I played a couple songs all the way through that I've always wanted to learn, and that kind of stuff. But really my motivation has been rather low lately. Yeah. But, and I'm not beating myself up on it. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I was behind on getting podcasts out and this and that. And, I had some, I had some technical difficulties with the computer, and I just didn't feel like putting, I know what it's going to take to usually fix something.
Yeah.
And I just haven't been in the mood. And usually when I'm that way, it's, I listen to myself.
Yeah.
If I'm not feeling it, I'm not feeling it. And so, but I'm looking forward to, tomorrow. Sharon and I are going out to, there's a town out here. It's called Lava Hot Springs. It's a good 3.5, 4 hour drive from us, but the whole town is built on a massive hot springs. It actually has some really cool history. There was Native Americans had all sorts of, for them, it was like holy ground. Mm-hmm. And when the, United States military came out here, the whole town was kind of considered they respected it as a sacred place, as a spiritual place. And it was considered, there's no war here, no matter what happens, this place is sacred. And so it was, people started building on it. And then, with anything back in the early, 20th century, you had that with Kellogg and all those other, all the what do you call it? Healing the medicinals and that whole craze that went across the United States.
Yeah.
And so the waters were, all of its healing qualities and properties of the waters of the hot springs, that kind of stuff, and so it was a huge drop. But what's really cool is a lot of the hotels literally built and they pipe the water up into the hotels themselves. So like the downstairs of the hotel will be giant hot pools and varying temperatures. And then they mix, there's a river that goes through there, and they mix the river water in to change the temperature. And there's several places. One was an old hospital, and that one's got different pools, and you just go from one to the next. And the hot ones are like, holy Hannah. I mean, it's hot.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do a little getaway tomorrow. Meet up with some people that we've been chatting with online from that part of the state that we haven't had a chance to meet, and there's kind of doing a little meet and greet and hang out over there, and it'll be kind of fun to do a little getaway. And then the other thing was work has gotten a little weird. The odd thing about it, it's still the stuff that I've shared about with our, with all that HR stuff. And now we're finally about to get our employee handbook, and, certain, let's just say the rules are starting to come down, like the new, because we haven't been in compliance on a lot of things.
Yeah.
And not everyone's really happy about it, and
yeah.
For me though, I'm kind of, some negative things could happen, but I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to just let, whatever happens. I'll deal with it, at that time. I'm not going to worry about it. But it's amazing how people are all fine and dandy with change until it affects them directly.
Yes. Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like now they're fired up and starting, starting stuff with everyone else. And,
right.
And I just kind of had to sit there at one point and be like, I totally know what you mean. I gave him some help about how you can approach it. Because I do know I've done a lot of research on a lot of employee things over the years. And so I was helping him out a little bit, but otherwise I was like, my name's Paul and this is between y'all.
Yeah.
My life is easier sometimes when I just say, you know what, none of my business. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. If you can just stay in your own lane, it's a whole lot easier at times.
Yep. That's it.
Yeah, because, people are looking for an ally a lot of times.
That's it.
Because then they can go, well, Heno agrees with me, especially like, because they know who you are, So,
that's funny.
You know what I mean? And I say that only half joking. Like, if they know you have any sort of pull sometimes, they might be looking for an ally that they may think has some pull or whatever, or some, even if it's the most minute influence, I used to have that at times, in the positions I was in, people would try stuff like that with me. And I'm like, nah, no, like, listen, you got to worry about you. Don't worry about them. Worry about you. Yeah. I'm going to worry about me. If it's something that concerns whatever, if it's within my job, I'll worry about it. But, yeah. But you're right. If you can stay clear of it, it's probably for the best.
Yeah, that's the hard part, is because I see how it affects him, and I want to be helpful, and I want to help him out if I can. But there's a part where I have to say, they can do what they want. They can. They're our employers. If they're not doing anything illegal.
Yeah.
They have a certain leeway, and we can either accept it or go find work somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So it's, things are still getting mixed up, and that, like I said, I'm very lucky and grateful that I've managed to come through this. I'm in a place where I can pretty much go, along with my day and not get sucked up into it.
Yeah.
And that's very fortunate.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because there's certain positions you can't help but get sucked into drama. Like generally, like if you, I remember a place Jen worked at where, because it was hard to get out of the area she worked in, if anyone basically sniffed that you were getting close to getting out of there, or if they thought they might be getting out of that area, they would just claw and scratch, kind of thing. And it was just awful, because people were just at each other's throats, because, it was so hard to get out of there. A lot of times it was only going to be one person getting out of there at a time, so it was awful, it's just constant drama. So if you're in a position where you can, kind of steer clear of it relatively regularly, that's awesome.
Yeah, because it's Sharon right now is having some hard times at work, and it affects her personal lives. It just does.
Yeah, sure.
And for me, even though like my own working on myself and self-improvement and those kind of things are a personal thing, the reality is the place where I get to practice it the most is at work, because work is the place where I'm around the most people. Even though, a lot of us, we tend to lash out, or we tend to, take it out on significant others or, our closest friends and companions and stuff like that. But the reality is we probably spend more time with our coworkers than we do with anyone else in our lives. And so that's the place where I get to actually work on it more than anything else. And then, it's just something I realized really early on, because work also, when we do something for work, especially if we have a lot of experience, that's a place where our ego can really pop up.
Oh, yeah.
Where we tend to have less of an ego with, our friends. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't be friends with us for very long.
Right.
Not. But what I mean? At work that's a place where there's a little competing. There's your knowledge, your experience, and those are those places where, where you get to test your sense of self.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the other side of it too is that, with your friends or significant other, you've essentially chosen them. You can make choices in those things and eliminate people. You don't get me wrong, you can in your work environment too, but it's a much different situation. Yeah. You can't generally choose your coworkers.
Yeah.
You
have your coworkers.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, you could choose to quit, but, realistically, that's a very difficult decision, versus, hey, this person is causing me a lot of grief. I can just choose to stop hanging out with you. It's hard, but I literally can just shut the door, not hang out with you, and whatever, my life will continue to just go on. If I just quit my job, I have to immediately go find another job. And then again, I don't get to choose my coworkers, so it's
once again.
So that never changes. Yeah.
I think that's why, it's the place where you really get to test this stuff.
Yeah.
You really do.
Yeah. Cause you never know what you're getting with, and every workplace gives you a nice dice roll of,
yes, they do.
And
that's the one thing, that I know that, we with the little, our little social media groups and whatever, we hear quite often about people that are just, they're ready to rage on somebody.
Yeah.
I usually stay out of that stuff.
Yeah.
Just because, I don't know people's situations. I don't know what, but I have this one reading that I read all the time, and it talks about that I have the responsibility to act, to react appropriately. It's, that, and the reason where I come from that is because as somebody who found lots of justifications to drink, or to behave badly, or whatever it was, I have that part of me that just wants to sabotage, and as a result, I will find any excuse. So yes, it's a high bar to sit there and say that, I have to act differently. It's worth it because I look at how my life has changed so much. Yeah. And part of it is that idea that I am the master of my reality, in that how I react to a situation dictates my level of inner happiness and inner peace.
Yeah.
I just choose not to do that today. And I've been shown a way to not have to do that and remain, when I'm done with the day, I feel good. I go home and I'm not taking stuff home with me.
Right.
And it really is a choice. And I think it's another one of those things where I just wish I could just download it into somebody's brain for a little while.
Yeah. I did for years. I couldn't get past a certain spot in two of the places I worked. And there's a variety of reasons, but I full on accept and know that one of them is because I was very much if I had a problem with a manager or a situation, I voiced it, and I full on know that while some people fully love me for that reason, where you stand with me generally, that does not fly in the work environment because people don't want to hear it, kind of a thing. And as a result, there were a lot of times where me and managers did not get along. They knew I'd go in, I'd bust my butt, I would do the work I was supposed to do, I was reliable, all this kind of stuff. But if I didn't like the cut of your jib or the way you worked or whatever, I was going to tell you. And I wouldn't hold back. And as a result, obviously I get a reputation for it. And I didn't care. And the thing is, at the end of the day, when I left work, I brought all of that with me. Like, oh, I'm working with that guy today, and all that whole shift. Get out of the way. Let me do it. Now, I was that way. And looking back, it's like, there were times where I would still probably do that again, because there were times I was justified, because I did work with some people that were awful employees. But there were other times where I worked with people who really weren't awful. I was just a jerk, and I know that. And you know what I mean? So with what you're saying, looking at it through my eyes now, if I were doing it, I would not be the same way. I'd pick my battles better,
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a hard thing. I talked to my buddy Andy, who I went and visited when I was in Michigan, and he's finally getting, life has taken a couple turns his way, which generally makes, it's always nice to hear, because he just hasn't quite learned to live life on life's terms.
Right. Yeah,
he's just in a better mood when things are going his way.
Sure.
So it was nice to kind of talk to him. But he's one of my friends that I know that his sense of right and wrong dominates his happiness. If he feels like, hey, well, that's not right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how much I say, would you rather be right or all that stuff. It just doesn't matter, because he has a strong sense of what's considered justice to him. And it doesn't, it's like, he sabotages himself because of it.
Yeah. For those keeping track at home, you're right. That is on the Distorted Thinking worksheet.
For those of you who are already anticipating Brian's response.
Right. You're like, come on, I'm close to bingo. All right. Exactly. Calm down. Yep. Yeah, it is. I'm very guilty of it myself. That is actually one of the hardest things that I've fought against in changing reframing my thinking. That was one of those that was really hard for me to push through, and it still is sometimes, but I think I've done a pretty good job of pushing through that one over the last probably 3 or 4 years, especially. That just constantly it's wrong. So, like that black or white, and life isn't black or white. It's gray. Honestly, if you look, it's rarely black or white. It's mostly gray. So, yeah.
How about your week?
Man, it's funny, the laziness thing. Oh man, have I been lazy? I mean, I've still gotten the podcast up, when I'm supposed to, which man, it's taken all I've had to do it though. I mean, just laying around going, come on, man, you at least do this, at least get that up, then go back to just doing nothing. But I just have not wanted to do anything. And, I went to therapy a couple days ago, and I told my therapist about it, and, and I've been super anxious and stuff over the last week and a half too. And, I'm not really sure why, other than maybe that there's something with the way the weather system that's been working through kind of the whole middle of the country, has something to do with it. But, it's been really, I've been feeling really off for the last week and a half roughly. And, I don't know. It's just a really strange feeling. I'm noticing I'm not kind of getting out of bed the way I was. It's taking a little more to really kind of, and really it's probably that I'm spiraling a little bit. I'm probably having a downward spiral with my depression. And again, as I've mentioned before, I tend to not notice it until I'm a good week into it. So I'm probably right about where I normally am when I notice. No real reason, which there isn't always. Yeah. Sometimes you just it just happens. And, but, just kind of been whatever, nothing really big's happened, but went into therapy the other day, had a really good session with her, kind of delved into how I've always worried about money, even when I've been okay money-wise, how I've always still, it's not enough. Not in a greed way, but just it's not enough way. Like someone's going to, pull the rug out from under you kind of way. Yeah. And much like I just am about life. Like, why can't you living in the moment and just be happy? It's like, no, someone's going to pull the rug out kind of moment. And it's, so I thought I had a really, really good talk with her about that. And I think we're going to talk more about it when I go back.
Cool.
So, it's, I walked out of there and I always feel like the best therapy sessions are the ones where you walk out similar to when, like a really good gym session, where you walk out and you're exhausted but recharged at the same time.
Yeah.
If that makes sense,
Totally does.
Yeah. I think that I've often felt that that's how I know I've had a really good therapy session. If I feel like I should talk more, I feel like it's maybe not as good as it could have been.
Yeah. Like you've really flexed the emotion a little bit in a way, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Because that to me is that's when, to me, if you have that feeling, you've been honest.
Yes. Yep. And I definitely am. I mean, I've which doing podcasts made going into therapy really easy.
That's a good point.
I walked in there and she was like, "Wow, you're really honest from like minute one." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll talk to, if someone asks me, I will." But again, I mentioned about like the job stuff. I'm a guarded person, but if I see someone is genuine about something, I'm usually like, "No, really, here is," unless, I've got a few things that, you've got to be within like an inner circle before I'll really get into it. But if I see you are really, if someone's really wanting to know about depression, or, I've had people ask me about, the hospice process, stuff like I went through with my dad. It's like, sure, I'll share with that because, they're genuinely looking for a connection or for help, stuff like that. Yeah, I'll totally be, 100% honest with somebody, because you don't feel like they're like setting you up to hurt you or something, you don't get that from
exactly.
Them. Yeah. So, but, it's funny though. Cause like when she asked when I wanted to come back, I almost wanted to be like, tomorrow, but I've been trying to go about a week and a half to give myself time to kind of process what I went through, and also to let things in life happen so that I can kind of react because, did I learn anything from that therapy session? Can I apply it? And then can I react to that and then go to, can I, go back in there with, hey, I was able to do this,
That's why I don't think, I have friends that and this is before I got sober, for years, they did every single self-help program in the freaking world.
Yeah.
They went to seminars, they read all the books and blah, 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 but I never saw them, it never came up as part of their life as in, in communication and things like that. It's like reading something and going, oh yeah, that makes sense is one thing.
Yeah.
Practicing it and sharing with others and working with others, there's something different about it when you're talking to somebody else, when you're interacting with somebody directly. And I don't, that's why I use books as more like reinforcement reminders.
Yeah.
They're not going to change me just by me reading it.
Because
I'm still processing it through my filter.
Yes.
Whereas when I'm bouncing ideas off of somebody else, whether it be a professional or a mentor or, a coach, I get better feedback than me because, that's when my, that little guy that wants to mess with me on my other shoulder.
Yeah. Well, it's no different than writing a song, I would assume, or being creative in any way. You could sit down, write something you think is the hottest thing ever, right? And you're like, this is the best song ever. Someone else hears it and goes, it's maybe not your best thing. Like, it's a little this or that, or it needs this or that. Yeah. That's why you work with a producer, because maybe they go, maybe you need to speed it up just a little here, or it needs this, or it needs, whatever. And I essentially, like, the two ways in my head that I keep looking at therapy is, one is it's school. I'm going to learn about me, and the other is essentially I'm looking at it similarly to the creative process, which is they're my producer. They're tweaking what I'm doing. I'm doing all this stuff to me, and they're going, okay, but let's do this little tweak here and this little,
That's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah,
it's a great way of looking at it. I've never thought about it that way. To think about it as far as like your life, a production.
Yeah,
because it makes sense, because who are we usually? We are the actor, the director, the producer. We want to control everything. We want to move all the pieces on the stage. We want to call all the shots. And when the other actors don't act the way that we think they should,
we go Axl Rose.
Yep.
Yep.
Exactly.
That's it. I'm out of here. Yep.
I hate me.
Yep.
That's an awesome analogy that the therapist sometimes is bringing in an outside director to say, hey, will you give me some feedback?
Yeah.
It's great.
And that's really what they've done, like, as I was talking to her about, I've been having trouble sleeping again, like getting to sleep. I've been having racing thoughts, which we talked about 2 episodes ago. And I even mentioned to her, I was like, we just did an episode on it. It's so funny. We just did an episode, and here I am. And, she was like, well, did you go through grounding yourself, bringing everything back home to you? And I was like, yeah. And I was telling her about, how, like, I have a fan in my room, and I was like, I turned the TV off and stuff, because sometimes I'll use a distraction, but that wasn't working. So I turned that off, and I just listened to the fan, and I focused on the fan and tried to bring it back to that. And she was like, okay. And she goes, well, next time, she's like, maybe kind of, use like a mantra or something and try that. If that doesn't work, again, clearing the mechanism, as I've said on here, those kind of things. And it's the same idea. It's like, okay, well, doing the didn't work, so maybe we need to put a drum fill in here or something to help with the dead space, because this didn't work. You know what I mean? It's moving the parts around until we get the song right, and then we can move to the next piece. And that's really what it is it's okay, like, just throwing a bunch of ideas at something, and what works for my production isn't necessarily going to be your answer, and the next that's why different producers exist, and that's why different therapists work for different people. And it really it just, like you said, if you just go get books and you read books. I've read a bunch of stuff about different ways that people have approached therapy and different techniques that have worked for people. And like, I've mentioned stuff to her even, like, before she's brought it up, about grounding and stuff like that, how I was aware of it and stuff like that. And, or stuff I've heard from you or other people where it's just come up in conversation, and, it isn't that I'm trying to act like I know more. It's just I'm bringing it up, and then we kind of tie our conversation sometimes. And it's just that I've read this stuff, but I'm in no way saying, well, I've read this and I know that, it's just reading something doesn't make you an expert on something, so.
No, it's funny how, like, the idea of intelligence and self-awareness, like, that's supposed to be, I'm very self-aware. Yeah. Self-awareness didn't really do much for me.
No,
it didn't
me either.
solve anything for me. Knowledge didn't fix it either.
Nope. I did both things. I was hyper aware of myself and what I do. And I've read whenever I do something, I tend to look it up and read all I can kind of consume on it. And all it does is it made me really paranoid and educated on my paranoia.
Yeah, exactly. So you can
now what?
yeah, so you can flog yourself some more with your self-awareness.
Yes. And you're just like, all right, I can play an awesome solo. That's what I can do. I can play an awesome solo. That's it.
And I think that's where it gets back to that what I was talking about the work environment is, we can all sit there and say, yeah, I know, I'm a jerk, I'm a this, I'm a that, blah, 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 I'll never change. Well, have you actually tried?
Yeah.
It's like, I used to talk a really good game. I would sit down with somebody, a close friend, and talk about everything that's going wrong and why it's going wrong and why I think it's happening. And I'd walk out the door and I would do nothing about it. I wouldn't try to change a thing.
It's so easy to do that because your friends aren't at work with you usually, so they don't see the whole picture. So you can sit down and talk about how horrible the situation is, and they're like, wow, that sounds terrible. Because you're not telling them how you're a jerk to everybody at work and how a lot of times you're probably the cause of a lot of that drama, And I mean, they may know it because they know you,
Yeah.
But still they're going to go, wow, that's whatever. Yeah.
I had something kind of heavy that I heard this last week, and this one tripped me out is part of 12 steps, is the amends process.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very important part of it all because it really is about it's about relieving ourselves. It's not so much about going out and saying, I'm sorry. It's about, it's about really taking the burden off ourselves. And one of the most difficult things for people is when, especially, is when there was nothing they could do about it. And it happens a lot when you're children, right? So, if they were abused by somebody, they had a really, bad experience with a relative or whatever it is. And like I typically ask people that I work with, I say, was there anything that you could have done that would have changed the situation? Because, it takes two to tango.
Yeah.
But there are situations where it doesn't matter what we do. We're not in a position where we can change anything.
Right.
And that's why I kind of I've always looked at it as like kind of a benchmark. It's like, okay, then you probably don't have a part in this, especially when you're like 10 years old.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Right. So, but this guy I know brought up this point. He said, but I do have a part in it. And I go, well, what is that part? And he says, I have never really forgiven them. I use it. I still have a resentment 30 years later, and I jab it at them when it's convenient for me. And I was like, wow. Like, that was a level of like self-awareness and admission. And he was saying it from the standpoint of I've recognized this and I'm going to work on this. So even though at the age of 10, the abuse, there was nothing he could do.
Yeah.
This is all on this other person. And whether they'll ever acknowledge it or not is irrelevant.
Yes.
This man himself is saying, that was bad. Am I owed something? You know what? It doesn't matter because I need to look at what I do with it.
Yeah, because, and please, no one take this the wrong way, but at some point, he goes from being the victim to the abuser in that scenario. And like I said, don't take that the wrong way. I am in no way justifying. I'm not. It's just...
That was his observation of himself.
Yeah.
And I had to sit there and go, I thanked him for sharing that.
Wow.
Because, and then the second thing is I was just like, bravo.
Yeah.
Like, bravo for looking, like, truly owning it.
Yeah.
After all these years to sit, because I was like, you have no part in that. He's like, yeah, but I do.
Yeah, because you would think he wouldn't, because again, 10 years old, it's like, no, because you can't act you're not acting sexy or, you know what I mean? Anything of those kind of ilks that would draw the person in or whatever. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And here he is, a 40-year-old man still jabbing at a person.
Yeah.
Because and
a lot of people would just go, no, they deserve it, and it's but geez.
Yeah, and he's looking at it as an opportunity for his own personal growth.
Wow.
I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of heavy. I was like,
wow. Yeah, because I bet you never expected that at all, I'm sure.
No, I didn't. Man. I didn't. Yeah, and those are once again, it comes back to that thing where it's like, we have these things where it's like, oh, well, in this case, some of this goes back to this. I heard this radio when they have that, whatever it is, like International Forgiveness Day or, the Day of Forgiveness, is some National Forgiveness Day.
Yeah.
And, I was probably listening to NPR, and they had this person who, literally had their kids, her son was murdered or whatever. And she went into the prison and forgave him. And I sat there, and the old Heno, prior to recovery, would have never understood that. I would have been like, what the hell? No. You have no. Yeah, that's not right. The new Heno understands that what she's doing is relieving the burden of herself, getting rid of that, like we talked about last week, that bitterness, the resentment. She is absolving herself of negativity and carrying this stuff for the rest of her life. And some people would say, you don't owe that guy a thing. You shouldn't let him off the hook.
Yeah.
It comes back to my other thing. It's saying that there is no hook.
There is no hook. Yeah.
And that as long as I carry this resentment, I keep a hook in there.
Yeah.
And for what? That guy doesn't care.
Yeah.
Or I can get rid of the hook completely, and two human beings can go on doing the best that they can with what they've got.
Yeah.
And now I understand that. And I will seriously have still people look at me like I just dropped in from outer space.
Yeah. And I understand, because most people would absolutely just be like, he doesn't deserve, blah. And like you're saying, it's like, it isn't about him in the scenario. Yeah. It's not. It's about, and I know, every once in a while I'll see that, like, it was a few months ago, there was a guy was at his sentencing, and for murdering, I think it was like a teenage girl or something like that, and her parents were at the sentencing, as normal, and her mom and her dad, the family always gets a chance to speak, and they forgave the guy, and people were, I wouldn't have this, and I'm like, first of all, to do that soon, because it was like, it had only been like a year before, to be able to reach that point that quickly, I was like, wow, because that took a lot of strength to me for them to be able to reach that point that soon. Oh, because that's the kind of thing you got to work. You've got to process the grief, the loss. You've got to go through the whole process of grieving there. All the steps and all that. And the fact that they were able to, and I mean, they weren't like. They weren't asking for, don't give him the death penalty. They weren't doing any of that kind of thing. They were just like, look, you shouldn't have done that, but we forgive you because, and the woman even said, because I don't want to carry this burden. You are going to get, you're here because justice will be served. And basically I'm putting it in the court's hands to, carry the burden. Basically is what she was doing. And I was like, well, there you go. Yeah. I mean, that's, it was still, I was like, man, at the sentencing though, it was like, geez, it wasn't 5 years down the road or something. It was that soon. Yeah. I was like, wow. Yeah. It just, I mean, you don't see very many people put their faith in although maybe it was, a play to try to get the death penalty or something. I don't really know, but it was, whatever it was still something you don't see very often.
Yeah.
So
to me, it's very moving.
Yeah.
Because it's once again, it's one of those things where, for me, the reason I understand is because I've done it. I've let go of things. Yeah. I've made that choice, and the sense of relief that I got from it, and it's that same choice as I choose not to fight situations,
Yeah.
It's like, I used to try to fight everyone and everything,
Yeah.
And when I let go of that, I became a happier person.
I used to be mad at everything. I mean, I used to get mad at the world, you know? Why isn't this better? Why isn't this better? Why doesn't this go right for me? Why is this? And it's like, and I'm not saying that my life is like aces now, but it's just, what it is now is it's probably, even if it's the same level of whatever happens in life, like life still lifes me the same way. But I'm not carrying the resentment with it. So it seems better, even if it actually isn't. It may just seem better, you know, the perception seems a little better. So even if for no other reason, it seems better because I'm not also carrying a 3,000 pound rock behind me.
That's it. And that's the key. That's the key. It's perception. The world hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Other people haven't changed.
No.
It's just my view. And, you know, that's like, I've said this over and over again. If ignorance is bliss, I'm happy to be a little ignorant.
Yeah, Jen used to say that all the time.
Did she?
Yeah, because I was always like, God, how can you be, you know, not ignorant, but it was like, she'd always talk about how she was happily naive.
Yeah,
and I was like, how can you be like that, you know? And she's like, because it, you know, like, I'd rather be happily naive than, you know, angry all the time. And over time, I'm like, you know what? You're right. Like, some days I wake up and I'd be like, I wish I could just be dumb for the day, or, you know, naive, ignorant, however you want to word it. I just wish I could be that way sometimes. Because, you know, you just see some people going through life and they're as happy as can be. And you're like, oh, I just wish I could be like that, you know? You know, here I am overthinking every little thing someone says to me or my actions or this or that. And you just see some people that are singing to themselves while they're putting gas in their car. And I'm like, oh man, I wouldn't do that because I'd be, who's listening to me sing? And why am I, you know, like that kind of a thing. And it's, you know, it's like, you know, or you see somebody who's like, you know, really large person just dancing down the aisle at the grocery store in their sweatpants or something. And I'm over here going, all right, I'm making sure that I'm not wearing something that's this or that, you know what I mean? It's like, I wish I could have that feeling and just let go, just completely let go. And, you know, the only times like, and, you know, it's funny because people, you just gotta, you know, just get really drunk. I was like, no, I've been really drunk. I'm maybe one of the most tight people when I'm drunk you'll ever meet. I still don't fully let go. You know, that's how tightly wound I am beforehand. So that's been one of those things, not the drinking, but one of the things that over time I'm trying to work on today, you know, or also, you know, like, you know, that one podcast Beyond the 140 after the show, there's people jump on their webcams and just in a chat room basically. And I avoided it for the longest time, and I'm sitting here going, why am I avoiding it? It's people I talk with on my phone all the time. I've been on that show. I've sat there. They've all seen me. They know what I look like. It's not like I'm hiding anything. They know what I look like. They know what I sound like. They all like me, or various ones of them like me. Why am I like hiding from this? So last week I finally jumped on there. You know, I pushed myself to jump in there, and there weren't very many people, but it was like, why am I not doing this? Like, you know, these are essentially friends. Why am I hiding, you know? And, you know, today, a guy that I'm friends with on Instagram posted a thing where he wanted people to post a video of them talking because, you know, he wanted to hear everybody's accent. He's from Michigan also. So I was like, well, I'm from, you know, Michigan also, so there's no real big accent here. So, you know, but I did it. I did it like immediately. I didn't, I didn't do like 5 videos, or the first one I did, I just whatever and posted it, you know. I've been trying to push myself into more of those kind of things where I'm putting myself out there more because it's just ridiculous not to on something like that. Like, who cares? You know?
Yeah.
Like, what's the worst case scenario? Like, go through what my therapist does with me when I start on something. Whenever I start down these roads, she goes, okay, what's the worst case scenario?
Yep.
And I tell her, and she goes, Why is that so bad? And like that one, what's the worst case scenario? Someone happens to laugh at me? Well, that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
What's the big
It's
deal?
amazing how we create these enormous fears over nothing.
Yeah.
It really is astounding.
Yeah. It's so dumb. And again, I know it's dumb. That's the worst part for me, is in my head, I know it's stupid. And that's so frustrating, you know, because I know it's dumb. And yet I go down that road, and it frustrates me so bad because I hate when people know something's dumb and do it anyway. And here I am.
Hello. Prime example.
Yeah. Knocking on my own head. McFly. You know?
Oh, that's so true.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah, I think that's that awareness doesn't, like, you and I were talking about, it's like, okay, you're starting to slip a little bit, falling into whatever certain pattern or whatever that is. Awareness doesn't, like, knowledge doesn't make me realize that that's happening. Paying attention, though, to my actual behaviors, that's something else.
Yeah.
Interacting with other people. I mean, it's easy. This is another one of those things with isolation. It's easy to slip when you're in isolation.
Oh,
it's
sure.
not as easy to slip when you have people around you.
Right, and it makes sense in isolation because you're not exercising the muscle.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, that's really what it is. You're not using it, so you lose it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people, you can knock social media all you want, but it really does give a lot of introverts an opportunity to exercise a social, muscle in ways.
That's a good point.
You know?
Yeah.
Like
if you start noticing that the things you're saying are a little, judgmental, or you're stepping to that, jumping to conclusions.
Sorry, you say jumping to conclusions. I think of the Office Space, the jump to conclusions, Matt.
Yeah. That was brilliant.
Yeah. But you're right. Like I said, look at me over the last week. The places where I have pushed myself have been in online situations, because I'm like, look, it's, I'm just sitting in my house, and these are opportunities for me to push myself into areas where for whatever reason, I'm not comfortable, and I should be. Every time I do an interview for Salty Language on The Enthusiast, we always have the cameras on.
Oh, cool.
I've never met some of the people we've interviewed I've met, but most of them I haven't. You'd think the easier way would be to have the cameras off. That way, it would eliminate one. That way they couldn't see any sort of nervousness or tick or anything that I, may have, like my constant fidgeting, or whatever. But we don't. We always have the cameras on, or almost always.
Yeah.
So why, you know what I mean? So it's just, it's funny how we do that stuff, So, I'm going to do this. We used to do this a long time ago on the show. Like, me and Jen used to do this where we kind of do like a challenge or whatever. So I'm going to try to do that more, to me anyway, is that I've been trying to do this over the last few weeks, which is find something, like when I see an opportunity in front of me and go, old me would run and hide. New me has to push into this a little bit. Even if I don't go all the way, like I've got to at least try to push myself out of my comfort zone a little bit. So, so that's what I've been trying to do. So, if you're listening, try to do the same thing. Even if you don't suffer from any sort of a mental illness, but if you do, again, know your boundaries. Know if your tank's on empty. If you're on empty, don't do this. Recharge first. But listen to your body and such first. If you're on empty, don't go out for 3 days straight or something like that. Don't push yourself into a bad state. None of that kind of thing. But push yourself a little bit and see, even if it is only in a chat room or in a sense that, message somebody on online dating that you wouldn't normally mention, someone you may in a silly way think is out of your league or something like that. Just even if it's like that, just do it anyway, that kind of a thing. So that's my challenge to everybody for the week. So
that's a good one.
Yeah. So I found this thing that, I came across this kind of like an article that kind of, you and I have talked about this a variety of times ever since I first saw that show Happy-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And the title of this is The Hard Work of Happiness, which is it ties so much into this kind of stuff.
Yep.
That it isn't, you just don't go to therapy and ta-da, I'm happy, or you don't take a pill, you don't grab an antidepressant and hey, I'm happy. Or you don't go through 12-step and all of a sudden, hey, I'm all better, I'm fixed. It's a constant work, and I really like that this guy talks about how when he went into therapy, how where is it? He put no, I don't want to read the whole thing. It's a little longer than I'd like to read on here, but he put, after all, to experience true happiness, we may need to change patterns of thought and behavior, which is retraining our brains to tune into what's right instead of looking out constantly for what's wrong or could be wrong, which goes into, like we talked before, kind of identify what's wrong, and then you can go, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. Now learn how to do what's right, Take responsibility for our lives. Victims aren't typically happy people. We covered that today. And that's so true. The more you play victim, it's such a bad mentality. It's so bad.
It's I brought up with my weekly men's group. I brought up resentments and a week ago, and one of my friends said, he said, this is exactly the topic I needed to. This is what I needed to hear and share about this week, because I've been acting the victim lately.
Man, it's amazing how often that happens, isn't it?
Yeah, and you don't even realize it. That's where the first time I had somebody, I walked in and I needed to download a little, and it was, I was at a rehearsal and I'm downloading a little bit, and this was the first time anyone ever said this to me. And my buddy Dave goes, it kind of sounds like you're playing the victim right now, and I was like, wow. Light bulb, it was so the word entered my brain with absolute truth.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yes, I am playing the victim. I am choosing, because it's a lot of times it's a choice. We love to work it,
Yeah. Yeah. And don't get me wrong. I mean, we just like there's days you need to be lazy and there's days you need this and that. There's just some times where you kind of need just a minute to be a victim, but it's also one of those things where you just got to make sure you don't get too comfortable there, because it's a dangerous mindset, Yeah. Not dangerous, I guess, but it's just, it's a bad mindset to have.
Let's just say it's detrimental.
It's very detrimental. Yeah. Because once you fit into that mindset, you really start looking for, why is everybody out to get me, rather than why am I acting like this?
Yeah, and it's it's funny how this is actually an example of ego run riot, and yet you feel like you're the when you're feeling the victim, you're like, I don't have an ego. Yeah, you do.
Never lose sight of, like Heno mentioned earlier, like what could you have done differently in the situation? Because it's many, many times that is the part of the situation. Like that's what you can change in a situation. Like that's exactly what you can change. Like, and or you can at least work on. And it's amazing how you can a lot of times make a situation so much better by just tweaking how you would have behaved in that situation. And then you wouldn't have been a victim. There's so many times where you go, oh, well, this person did this, and that. And you're like, yeah, but if you wouldn't have said this, and this, or if you would have left, this wouldn't have happened, so just be aware of that. Because Heno fortunately had a friend who just walked right up to him and was like, hey, you're acting the victim. A lot of friends won't do that.
They won't do that. Well, because we don't necessarily, it's one of those things like, all right, so you're doing a lot of work on yourself. You're going to recognize it.
Yeah.
You know, most people aren't working on themselves.
Right,
so they're not becoming aware. They're not, because of this article you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically,
it's not easy.
It
takes
easy.
work.
Yep. And it's easy when you're working on this too, it's so easy to have a bit of a backslide and not even really realize that you've slid backwards just a little bit. It doesn't even have to be much, but you can slide backwards and not realize that you've kind of done that because you can get a little complacent. You know, you feel like you've moved forward and you're kind of like, oh yeah, things are good. You know, like we've talked in the past, and then you're like, maybe I'll make it 2 weeks between my therapy or 3 weeks and then again, that's no bueno. So, you know, well, it can be depending on, you know, just make sure you, you know, keep your strategy with your therapist. The next one on here was, create a better future for our lives and work toward reaching that future, which is, you know, goal oriented, which is a good idea. Again, whether they're short or long term, it's generally better probably to have both, you know, because if you only have long term ones, you can feel like a failure because you don't see yourself achieving in the meantime. But, you know, and this last one, which is one that I just was talking to my therapist about actually also, which is sacrifice short-term relief such as drugs, alcohol, spending money for long-term gains such as true happiness. You know, and like I was telling her, I was like, you know, the guy I want to be, and I think I said it on the show a few weeks ago, I was like, the guy I want to be in a lot of environments is that guy 2 beers in. But I don't want to have 2 beers or a couple of shots of whiskey or whatever to be that guy. I want to be able to walk into it. And if I want to have the beer or whatever, that's fine. But I don't want to have to depend on it to get comfortable, you know? Yeah. And, you know, of course, you know, she agreed with that because, you know, that should never be the answer. Plus, if I'm on an antidepressant, you know, I shouldn't be having to have a bunch of drinks. So, you know, and in the long run, that's the better answer anyways, is get your mind right so that you can be comfortable walking into an environment rather than walking in and, you know, because a lot of people are not going to be, you know, they see you and the first thing you do every time you walk into an environment is right to the bar and knock back, you know, a couple whiskeys or something. They're going to be like, what the hell's his issue? You know? You know, or money, you know, as you've mentioned in the past about retail therapy, you know, we've talked about a lot of these things on here, that a lot of times you've got to kind of get these things straight, because retail therapy may feel good at the time, but in the long run, you end up with stuff, but it does not address the actual issue of why you're doing it, you know? But he pointed out that, you know, like this therapist he ended up with at one point, he didn't care for him because the therapist, every time he had a negative thought, basically his therapist made him grab a worksheet and write down, where was it? I want to kind of get this right. Where is it? Whenever he got mad or sad, he had to fill out a worksheet. It forced him to challenge the thought and look for a rational alternative way of thinking about his problems. For example, if I was angry because someone said or did something I didn't like, I had to write down the feelings, actions, and possible outcomes I might experience by pursuing the thought. Then I had to write down my desired feelings, actions, and outcomes, which were the exact opposite of what I was currently experiencing. After that, I wrote down an alternative thought, what Frank would call rational, and unlike my first thought, this new thought was true. For example, a rational thought would be, this person has free will to do, say, and think what they want. Nothing the person says or does needs to question my self-worth and inner peace, which is eternal and not up for debate. And he said when he first started seeing this guy, he had to do this about 25 times a day. Now, we talk about doing the work. This is doing the work.
That's amazing.
I was given these same worksheets. And when I first read them, my initial thought was, you're out of your mind. Now, again, you know, I have very much approached everything that I've been told and given by my therapist with, I will at least try it, because I'm trying everything. Now, my issue is always been, it reminds me of when I was being trained for a manager spot, they gave me a list of books they wanted me to read. And I don't know if you've ever read management books, but oh man. Oh, they're just full of buzzwords and just empty garbage.
And jargon.
Just garbage. And if you happen to be listening to our show and you think some of these phrases and stuff we are saying is garbage, go read some management books because, just empty garbage. And I understand there is some truth to some of what they say as well, but it's almost like they've taken stuff from like Buddhism and different not mantras, but different sayings, and they've just made it completely devoid of wisdom. And it's just like, it sounds good now, so we'll use that,
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, they're terrible. And anyway,
So funny.
but that's kind of how I look at when I read the worksheet the first time. I was like, oh, this reminds me of some of the stuff I had to do for this. But then I thought about it more and more, and it was like, I'm not going to do the worksheet, but what I am going to do is when I get really mad, and I know it's an irrational mad, I am going to try to figure out how to reframe it. And that's how I told her that, and that was like, okay, that's fine. Because now I'm still essentially using the worksheet, but it's in my head. I'm not actually filling it out. I'm picturing like, okay, why did this bother me? First of all, and why am I framing it this way? Why am I not framing it in a more positive or a more beneficial light? And basically, is there an opportunity for me to change / learn from it? And that's what I've been trying to do. That's kind of been my baseline for my newer thought process.
Yeah. And
it's been working pretty well. There's still been times where I'm just like, nope, just irrational anger, and I Hulk. But, but he said at one point this guy realized that he, where is it? I'm trying to see where it's at. This I actually thought was a good line or point here. He said he would grit his teeth and fill out the worksheets. Said he did them multiple times a day. I'd have the angry thought or depressed feeling, go to the worksheet, fill it out, and it was hard work challenging my recurring stream of negative thoughts. It was like, as Frank often described it, learning to drive a car in England. I was so used to going one way, now I had to go the another way, which that makes total sense, Yeah. It was uncomfortable. It was not natural challenging my thoughts. It was hard work, but it changed my life. And that makes total sense. And by the way, you can probably, I'm not advocating not going to therapy. You can probably find an example of these worksheets online pretty simply if you look for them. By changing my patterns of thinking, I began to change my life. I started taking responsibility for my actions. I saw where I'd been wrong. I learned to question the thoughts that held me back and applied new ways of thinking that helped me grow. I started feeling happier more consistently, not from external treasures or short-term balms, but a genuine happiness that came from within. I now see Frank once a month instead of once a week. He still gives me that look when I'm feeding him a line of horse poop, we'll say, about why such and such person is wrong and I'm right. Then I know it's time to do the worksheet, to challenge the thought, to become mindful, to continue the hard but beautiful work of happiness. And I really like that because I do that with my therapist where I'll start talking about something and she will remind me of like, remember to do your breathing, remember to ground yourself, because clearly my mindset has taken me off of the path. And she's like, nope, get back over here, get back into the right lane. And, that's a good sign. And like him, his therapist is basically like, basically in my head, I just picture his therapist just pulling out a worksheet and handing it to him, and being like, man, almost like giving you a detention form or something, like, dang it.
Totally.
Yeah. So.
That's really that's really doing the work. And
Yes.
that's also the main thing that I get from that is he set aside the one thing that usually prevents our growth, and that's ourselves. When we want to administer, like you say, okay, I need some help, but I only want to do the things that I'm okay with.
Yeah.
And all of us started that way.
Yep.
All of us walked in at one point and they said, okay, I've got this program for you. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yep.
Let me see it before I agree to anything.
Yeah.
I was asked, am I willing to go to any length to be sober? And I was like, what exactly does any length mean?
Yeah.
Immediately I was wanting to judge and insert myself into the process.
Yep.
And I really wanted to at first. I wanted to self-administer. I wanted to, give myself the medicine. Here, you give it to me and I'll decide what I want.
Well, sure, because you had already proven you had made good decisions.
Exactly. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing that is the brilliance of all of that. And the part of that I call insanity.
Right.
Is that up till this point, my thinking got me to here.
Yeah.
And yet I want to continue with my thinking rather than actually turn it over to somebody else and write 25 freaking pages.
Oh, man, I can't imagine.
You
know what, though?
Pretty epic.
I'll tell you what, if I had gone in there, into my therapist, and really, if she had started it that way, I probably would have been writing about like that, though. Oh, man. I'm so glad I approached it the way I did instead. What I did was I just took what she gave and I just applied it to the way that I think. And I found a nice medium. And when I explained it to her, she was like, that works. Yeah.
That works.
As long as you do the work. That was basically the compromise, essentially. If not, go back to the form. If you can't do that, then use the form, because the form basically makes you do the work, because you have to see it to completion, essentially. It's funny you talked about that, and it just reminds me of listening to you on Angela's awesome podcast. When you told about when you first went to therapy. About how you were just like, I'm going to do it, like it's going to go this way and I'm going to this. And how you were I'm going to control every aspect of this. And you were the reason that when I went to therapy, it was not that way. It was very much like, nope, I'm walking in open-minded and let's just see what happens, because you totally were, so the opposite way that I was like, I don't want to go in that way. It's just, but I imagine so many people go in more with that mindset than my mindset, because of the control angle of it, or aspect of it, it's
especially when it's been suggested to you that you should go do this.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing if you've decided on your own to go do it, because most of us are be a little more open-minded, but many of us, it's been, we've been either told to do it, it's been suggested or something that you need to go see a therapist.
Yeah.
So that means we walk in with our, our little chip on our shoulder.
Yeah.
Like, okay, fine, I'm doing this, but I'm going to do it my way.
Yeah. All right, therapist, let's see what those fancy degrees got for me. Yeah. Yeah.
That's great.
Because I'm sure they get a lot of people that act like that too,
Oh, I that would be one of those ones where I'd love to see the outtakes.
Oh, I know, right?
Just of the therapist's face of the first 15 minutes of most sessions.
Yeah, like I don't want the invasion of privacy part of it, really. I don't want to get involved in someone's like actual stuff, but I wish I could just see kind of the therapist reaction, like you said, to that part of it.
It could be silent. You don't even know how.
Yeah,
you don't even need to hear what he's saying. Just, just them trying to keep a straight face or whatever it is.
Right. Because obviously anything else would be, just horrible breach of confidentiality and stuff. But I would just love for some of that, just just to be the fly on the wall for some of that.
Exactly.
Oh man.
The best part is when you'd hear something that you thought yourself. You're like, oh wow, I said that once too.
Yeah. Right.
and I didn't notice that reaction.
I have asked a
Probably
few
should've.
times. There's been times where I've had something where I think it's a really just off the wall thought, and I'll be like, have you ever been asked that before? Like I'll do that once in a while because it's just the way my head works. Like I just need to know if because it's not a breach of anything at that point. Because I'm not saying, did this person ask you? I'm just, have you ever been asked that, and usually I'm not the only one.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, am I uniquely stupid?
Right.
No, you're just like everybody else. Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, cool. All right, that makes me feel better. Yeah, it's like even if you're lying to me, awesome. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. It's like the first question you should always ask your therapist is like, now you can't tell on me, right? I wonder how many therapists have been asked that somewhere in the first 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I don't mean with someone laughing, Oh, man.
Well, that's one of the reasons I never went and saw a therapist for years, is because I knew I was going to just lie through my teeth.
Right? Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
I knew it.
Yeah.
I knew I was just going to lie. So I'm like, why am I going to go in there? How bad is that to have that level of self-awareness? I feel like I am perfectly normal, yet I'm willing to admit that if I saw a therapist, I'd lie. Yeah. Yeah. It's that, I'm that, yeah.
That's terrible though, too, isn't it? I mean, unless like you have to go for, like I could see, not that I want to advocate anyone lying to a therapist, but I could see where somebody might, if they had to go for like a job or a court reason type of thing. But if you were going of your own free will with nothing hanging on the line, you're just, and you're still holding back or lying. like, wow. You know what I mean? It's like, that is really interesting to me.
But it's the truth. It's, you would be surprised how many times I have actually heard that. I mean, it's not a lot, but it surprises me how many times I've heard people say, you told them everything?
Yeah, I've had people do that to me already too.
Like you didn't hold something back?
Yeah.
Like to them, it makes no sense to, and it's like, I want to get something from this. I want to grow from this.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, but if you let go of everything, what are you going to have? And it's like a fresh start. It's like maybe this is why you're still screwed up, is because you feel like because I literally was, I just sat there. I was like, so you would like that there's something to gain from holding something back, from not telling the whole truth.
Yeah, there's no power play in good therapy. Like, there's no struggle for power in there if it's good therapy. Yeah. Like, if you have a bad therapist, sure, maybe, because they're trying to keep you coming back or whatever it is. But in a good therapy session, they're only there to help you. The only way they can help you, much like a general practitioner, is for you to be forthcoming and honest. So I just don't understand why you wouldn't tell them what is relevant to what you're talking about,
And that's why I'm surprised I still hear it so much, because I honestly don't understand that mindset.
No,
I don't. Mm-mm. I don't. And I don't know, maybe I used to. I sure don't now, because for me, it goes back to that let go or be dragged. If you're still holding on to something, and you know what, maybe this is one of the reasons
why. Well, not to mention, if you don't let go of something, that kind of tells them something.
Yeah, and,
to me,
I've heard too many people share with me that they used to hold on to something because they thought, oh, what am I going to become if I let go of all this, or what am I, what's going to happen to me, or I still need to, there's something in their ego and their pride that says, you can't, like they're winning, and yet they come back later after they've fallen down again, and they go, you know what? The next time I decided to not do that, things got a lot better.
Yeah, right.
It's like, but it happens, and that's why the same thing goes with anytime, and this is the part of addiction that's just I mean, I honestly consider this insanity, but it's just the nature of the beast, and this also goes with you with mental health, that you talk about, is like, you walk in and you get prescribed a bunch of medications, but you don't tell the doctor or the therapist or the psychiatrist that, oh, I drink heavily.
Yeah.
You walk in, you talk about all these problems, and when they say, how much alcohol do you consume? Oh, I have a glass of wine a day, even though it's actually a bottle of wine a day.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you expect you're paying them money.
Yeah.
And you're not giving them all the information, and you wonder why things aren't working.
Mm-hmm.
Or why you had a bad, something didn't quite work well. And it really, it saddens me. You see it, I see it so much.
Yeah.
Where people go in and it's this term we have in our program, constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves.
Yeah, it is.
It's at a level that it's so deep.
Well, I know a lot of people won't be honest with their general practitioner or whatever because they're afraid they won't give them the medicine then. Like if you go in and you're like, hey, I drink a bottle of wine a day, and the doctor's going to go, well, I'm not going to give you this, this, and this because it'll cause liver damage or whatever, like when I went in for my antidepressant, he said, do you smoke marijuana? Do you do any of these drugs?
Yeah.
I said, no. He said, do you drink? I said, yes. And he said, how much? And I said, I don't know, socially. I was like, I really don't drink a lot at home because, I have depression. I try really hard not to drink at home.
Yeah.
I don't want to start that spiral much. I have an occasional beer or two at home. Maybe I'll have some whiskey, but I don't drink more than a glass or two generally. If I'm out, I may drink more. And he goes, well, I'd really prefer if you don't drink or very little while you're on this. Fair enough, because it negates the medicine. So also, sometimes medicines can have, effects on your liver and stuff. So, okay, fine. I haven't been drinking much anyway, so it's really not that big a deal. But I completely honest. I don't say, oh no, of course I don't drink, and honestly, I probably could have because I've barely been drinking lately, but no, I tell him exactly what I drink, because I want him to know, like if a medicine doesn't work, I want him to know there may be, like it's not going to work because of alcohol because I've been jostling around this carousel. I'm not going to let alcohol be the reason that I don't find an antidepressant that doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like that's, I'm not going to. If someone else does, that's their business. I'm not going to,
Yeah.
So, but again, I just don't, like you're saying, it's like, I don't understand it, but I want to find answers, I'm
That's
past
the
that
difference.
point. Yeah.
You've reached that part where you want this.
Yes.
It's not you need it.
Yeah.
And when people are in a place where they need it, they tend to not have that same kind of attitude and that same level of willingness.
Yeah. Look,
true.
I medicated my depression with alcohol for a while. Not to a full on excess all the time, but enough. Where I was drinking a lot. After work, it was whatever I could get my hands on, and it was 5-6 days a week kind of drinking. I did that for a while, and I realized that waking up to depression every day was better than the hangover I was waking up to. So I quit drinking, and then I went back to drinking, but it wasn't anywhere near as much. And now I don't drink anywhere near the volume I used to drink. And because I like I said, I barely drink at home. And if I go out, it's a few beers, and that's usually about it. And it's like I told my therapist the other day, I was like, I've been down the road of, like, oh, I feel better because I've had a few beers or whatever. And it's like, but the next day I wake up and I'm like, hey, guess what? Depression's here, and hey, it brought its buddy anxiety. It's like,
party.
Yeah, and it's like it didn't go away. So either I'm taking more beer and whiskey, or I can try these other ways to try to go for a long-term fix. I'd rather have the long-term fix.
Yeah,
it's just the better answer. I'm too old to keep applying liquor for the answer. It's a bad answer.
Yeah.
It's not a good answer. So, and she laughed when I said that. I was like, I tried it. It didn't work. Some people go the other way. Some people try, weed or pills or whatever is their answer. And they come out the other side sometimes and are like, yeah, that didn't work either. And then they go, so it's, just whatever it is you think is going to be your answer. So, yeah, whatever. So yeah. All right.
I like that article. It's good.
Yeah. And actually, I kind of skimmed it, and I was really tired when I skimmed it. There was just some points that I was like, yeah, there's some good points in here. I'm glad I actually went back and read it.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's really good.
Yeah, it's pretty strong.
It's the truth. It's the good and the bad of wanting to change.
Yeah.
The good is when you hear, that people have had success and their life has gotten better and all that kind of stuff. The bad of it is it's not easy.
Right.
It's not too difficult.
Yeah.
But it's not easy. There is some work that has to get done.
Yeah.
And it's hard when you're looking at the mountain,
Yeah.
when you're looking up at that mountain, you're just going, oh, how am I going to get up there?
And look, I feel like
the thing is,
I feel like I've come a long way in the last year or year and a half, whatever it's been since I've been in therapy. But, as I keep telling people, there's been plenty of times I've slid back.
Yep.
Do not think that just it's no different than losing weight or anything like that. It's not all forward progress. There is backslides, and when they happen, all you can do is just remember, similar to probably the best way to do weight loss or exercising, right? It's one day at a time, 1 minute at a time, like you've mentioned before, 1 second at a time, everything, just do not let the mountain, overwhelm you, just keep it right in front of your face and just keep pushing.
Yeah. Just look at where you're at. And what's amazing is it's just like with so many other activities, I think that it's happened to you as well, where all of a sudden you stop, you take a look around and you go, oh wow, I've come quite a ways.
Yeah.
That's all right, cool. Let's keep going. You're like, wow, look at this. I've actually made it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, there's occasionally there'll be something that I'll do and I'll go, yep, I just did that without even thinking. Again, a concert I went to a few weeks ago, a year, 2 years ago, man, I might have canceled on that. Yeah. I might have been like, it's too short a notice or whatever. I would have come up with something. No, I went. So, just little wins, big wins, whatever they are. So, speaking of, do you have a win for the week? I'm trying to think of one because, man, was I lazy this week. So lazy.
I did, and it's real. It's funny how when you're lazy, it's amazing what little baby step can be a win.
It's all right. Little wins still count, right? No matter how little.
Yeah. But it was. I actually did some things around the house that.
Oh, nice! You just gave me my win.
Yeah, like there are things that it comes down to that idea of being time drunk. I sit there and I go, my garage door needed a new lock. The key got busted off in the old one. Sharon picked up a lock at Home Depot, but it's a generic deal. I was going to have to modify the door, do some drilling, this has become this monumental task as this little lock sits on my desk. And I keep looking at it because this is going to be a monumental task.
Right.
So I grabbed a drill bit that was going to work better for my work to do everything. I mean, this honestly took me all of 15 minutes.
Yeah, but you and I have talked before about the whole 15-minute into 3 weeks of procrastination. Yeah.
But the good news about that is that once I did that one little 15-minute task, the next little 15-minute task wasn't that hard to undertake too, and it does have a bit of a snowball effect.
Right, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Just like self-improvement, home improvement is also like you do one little baby step and it's like, okay, all right, that wasn't that bad. Let's take on the next one. So my win was getting back into and this is actually a little goal for myself for this week is what I'd like to do next week is actually schedule myself. Like as if I have my own personal assistant. I'm going to schedule myself. I'm going to book a block of time that when I come home on, I'll do this on Sunday. Is that okay? On Tuesday when I get home from work I'll give myself 45 minutes, an hour of downtime. And then I'm going to take an hour. I'm going to complete a couple tasks. And if I feel like doing some more, I will. But I think what I'd like to do this week is actually kind of book myself, because I do tend to do better when I have some guidance. I think one of the reasons I was a bit lazy this week is I was kind of like, I'll see what I want to do.
Yeah.
And it ended up being nothing. So.
Yeah, I can understand that. I run that way at times too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. Cause I don't really schedule anything other than, the podcast basically. It's like, okay, well, we're doing this and, we have an interview, we have this and so.
Oh yeah, you see, like Stephanie was on vacation. I didn't get the podcast done. If she was here, I think I probably would have done it. So that's a good, so
right. I see. So I have an answer for you for that. What you need is for her to, before she goes on vacation, she needs to like record something for you and somehow it just like sends it to you at a certain time where it's like a voicemail or something of her like, yelling at you to get the work done. Exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah. Like, geez, maybe two. Yeah. That way, if you don't get it done, you get a follow-up one or something like that.
Like the snooze alarm.
Yeah. Like, come on, I'm almost done. Yeah. My win for the week was actually I made dinner 3 times this week, which is the most I've probably done in, boy, I couldn't tell you how long. So, and it wasn't anything extravagant, but it was still the idea that I did it. So, yeah. So,
that's a good one. I did that too once this week too, where I actually went out of my way and had more than something that fit in the microwave. There was actually dishes to be done afterwards.
Yeah.
And cutting boards and things like that. And it felt really good. It felt really good. Like when Sharon walked in and I say, hey, it's all in the kitchen. And she was like, wow, the vegetables and
right.
yummy food and
right.
Yeah. Felt good.
Yeah, it does. It was, I don't know, what got into me. So amidst all my laziness, there was that somehow. But maybe that's why I was lazy the rest of the week. I just spent it all right there.
You're like, I win.
Yeah, like done.
Mic drop.
Yeah. Between that and, I hit all the marks on the podcast. So, that's good. 'Cause I have been, 2 weeks ago, I missed the, deadline. Well, my self-imposed deadline, but still I missed the deadline for the enthusiast episode last week. I almost forgot about it. So this week it was actually a couple hours early. So, I went the right way this week.
Nice.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess maybe I wasn't as lazy as I thought. I just feel like again, it's just, see what I mean? It's like, I feel like I've been off, but maybe that's it. I feel like I'm off, but I'm actually like, I'm beyond on maybe. That's why I'm off. Because I think I'm off, but I'm actually like doing really well maybe. I'm just not used to this. I don't like it. I have to go into the factory and have this switch checked. I don't know. Something's not right here. Oh, man. All right, so I had one other thing I wanted to bring up before we get into the closing shenanigans that we always go through. I was listening to a guy, I've mentioned this show a few times on here, a podcast called Wrestling with Depression, by a guy named Marty DeRosa. And he usually has a comedian or a pro wrestler on with him, and they generally talk about depression or mental illness of some sort. And he brought up an organization that's the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and their website is NAMI, NAMI.org. And basically what they do is if you need help finding a therapist, you go to their website and they will help you find a therapist. And they also have like a helpline that's 1-800-950-NAMI. or you can hit him up on the Twitters at Nami Communicate. And I'll put all of that in on our Facebook group in the help, or in the one file that I have with helpful links as well. And that stuff will be in the show notes. So I just thought it was a really cool thing. I couldn't quite understand him in the show, so I sent him a Twitter message and was like, hey, can you hit me with that info? And he goes, sure can. And boom, hit me with it. So yeah. Like I said, I always dig his show because at the very end he's got that little upbeat music, and his closing line is "Don't be depressed, silly," which is kind of a play on the "just smile," like depression goes away. His is the "Don't be depressed, silly." He's making fun of that kind of line, and I laugh every time just about that I hear it. So there's just something about his, the delivery and stuff. So. Yeah, but anyway, so if you need help finding a therapist in your area, that's a resource to check out. So, boom. Knowledge.
Science.
Yeah. All right. I think we've reached the end of the show.
Yes.
All right. So let's see. What does Jen usually say stuffs here? You can reach Jen you can continue the conversation.
There you go.
By going to our website if you'd like to at thecrazylifepodcast.weebly.com, or you can email us at thecrazylifepodcast@outlook.com. You can reach Jen on Twitter at Jen's Crazy Life. Jen is spelled with a G. You can what was I going to say? Oh, Henno, what's your Twitter and such?
It's at Ida Henno, and you can find me on Facebook as Henno. And since it's been pretty much a year that you guys started, right?
Pretty close,
yeah. So there was the one of the first, I think it was one of the first couple episodes that I was walking my dogs, and Jen and Brian talked about social anxiety, and I was inspired to write a song. So if you go to my SoundCloud page, Monkey Tongue Productions at SoundCloud, and you can find a song. It's called "Ode to Social Anxiety."
Oh, right.
Yeah, and it's unfortunately not safe for general listening purposes. But if you'd like to hear my ode to social anxiety, please go to Monkey Tongue Productions. It was inspired by The Crazy Life.
Yeah, you should definitely go check that out. It was a song that Henno sent to me when we were talking about an intro song for the show, and I loved it, but we were like, we kind of want to keep the show a little more PG.
A little family friendly.
Yeah, and I was like, dang it, because I really liked the song, but unfortunately, yeah, so definitely go check that out, because I really enjoyed that song as well. I liked the song we ended up going with, too, but I did enjoy that one. Nice. I'll put the link in the show notes also.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah.
Actually, if I remember, I should write that down. So you can also reach the show's Twitter, or just check to see when we put up new episodes, at the Crazy Life Pod on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at Stunami. You can check out my other podcast, Salty Language, on Twitter at salty_language. Or you can go to saltylanguage.com to check out all the links for that show. That show is definitely not safe for work. I kind of forget to mention that when I mention that show, but it is definitely not safe for work. I forgot. Oh, if you want to read my blog, I never mentioned this, but if you want to check out my blog, which I need to write another post for, the last one I posted, which is actually maybe one of my favorite posts, called, the post is about putting on pants. About how, to me, putting on pants means that I've had kind of a better day, even though most people view putting on pants as a bad thing because it's not comfortable or whatever. But anyway, you can check out my blog. It's in the show notes, but you can also find it at stunami.wordpress.com. You can check out our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/crazylifepodcast. Let's see, what else do we have? We're also part of the Tangent Bound Network, which you can find at tangentboundnetwork.com. And you can also find us as part of the Wicked Radio Network at wickedradionetwork.com. If you listen to us on iTunes or Stitcher, if you could please rate us, review us, share us, whatever it is that you want to do, like that, if you could. It helps us in the search algorithms. It may help us get more listeners so that, maybe more people can hear us and we can help out more people. Or they can just enjoy us, whatever it is. So, yeah. And then I will also remind you, we're not therapists, doctors, lawyers, I don't know, any sort of paid professionals for this kind of field. So if you need therapy or help, please seek out a professional. Again, I gave you a great resource. There's a list of help things on the in the Facebook group under files, I believe it is. If you join the Facebook group, just check that out. Or like I said, please get help if you need it. If you're feeling suicidal, please, first of all, if you can help it, please don't be alone, because that's what any sort of mental illness or anything wants you to be. Please find some way of getting help, whether it's call the suicide prevention hotline number or text 741-741, and somebody will text with you to kind of help you through your crisis, or call 911 and tell them that you're having a mental health emergency. Or if you can, get a ride to an emergency room and just tell them the same thing, that you're having a mental health emergency. But please don't kill yourself, because that would be the worst decision there is. There is help out there if you need it. Think I've got through everything, right?
It's pretty good.
All right. You want to take us out of here, Heno?
Keep breathing.
We'll see you next week.